Okay, my couture crafters, I can't believe we are finally talking about ink. This is going to be a big one. I'm probably going to ruffle some feathers out there because ink is a touchy subject and everybody feels so strongly about their inks. But what I find is that the ink market and the stamp market are starting to be oversaturated. And that's not a bad thing. That just means that we have a ton of options. And crafters have a tendency, some crafters, to want to buy all the things. You want to have them all. If I see Jennifer McGuire or Christina Warner using it, I'm like, oh, I have to have that too. Do I really? No. I don't have a ton of space. You guys know I live in a tiny home. And so I have to be very selective with the things that I buy and the things that I really want to invest in. So I'm just going to tell you guys how I personally feel. Inks are a personal preference, but you will start to notice that all the card makers and all the crafters are starting to use particular brands for certain things. So I'm going to tell you what I've been seeing, what I know. I've been doing this for a while, so I do know, what I prefer and kind of what works and how you can kind of cheat the system, so on and so forth. I am using to test these, I'm using a solid stamp. You can really tell the quality of a stamp and the quality of ink by using a solid stamp. These are the most difficult. A clear solid stamp is probably one of the most difficult stamps to ink up because most of the ink wants to repel. Most of the dye inks want to repel. So you get those tiny little beads as opposed to full coverage. And we'll talk more about that as we go along, I think. This is an Ulta New stamp, by the way. I think it's from their Basic Shapes collection. So the first ink that I'm going to talk about are pigment inks. These here are pigment inks. Probably one of the first ink pads that you probably have ever bought were like the color box wheels, which are still really cool. I have a few with the little petals that you can take out, or maybe you're super old school before they started pulling out the petals. They have those long colors that range from like red to purple. Really pretty. I have them too. And those are pigment inks. You can take a pigment ink and use it on a clear stamp or a rubber stamp and probably get a very nice impression right off the bat. If you are buying the inexpensive, cheaper silicone acrylic stamps that are not high quality photopolymer and you want to see the impression work properly, you're going to want to get this right here. This is VersaFine Clear Pigment Ink. It will change your stamp life. If you're struggling with getting a decent impression, you don't want to have to own multiple types of ink to get a good deep impression, this baby right here. I understand that when you're starting out, sometimes you don't want to spend the money on the expensive things. However, you can't have two inexpensive things. You can't have the inexpensive stamps and the inexpensive ink and expect to get good results. I tell people buy the best that your money can afford. If you want to get the cheaper stamps from Michaels and the ones that are made in China, that's cool. Get a really good ink. Get this particular ink because it will work for you and you'll get a nice impression. I use this to stamp this sample right here. This color is Fantasia, and as you can see, it is crisp, it is beautiful. Pigment ink sits on top of the paper, so you're going to get a more of an opaque look every time you use a pigment ink. I can't remember how many colors they have of this. This is not a newer brand, this brand has been around forever, but it is a new type of ink. This new pigment ink, it's new. And also it's water resistant. So you can go on ahead and use this to watercolor with. Do not use your alcohol ink markers with this. You will ruin your markers. Do not use your alcohol ink markers with this. You will ruin your markers. But if you want to watercolor, this is safe to watercolor with. Beautiful, beautiful results. This would be the second ink that I invest in. I'll talk more about that. Another good ink to have is you definitely want to have a good white ink. I believe that the Unicorn Pigment Ink by Hero Arts is the best white that you'll find. Colorbox has a nice one, but it's got a frost to it. This is just a straight up white ink, and I've stamped it here on black paper, and it's beautiful. It's crisp. It's not stark white, but it's very difficult to get stark white. I probably could have stamped it repeatedly on with my stamp, but I just picked up the stamp, I inked it, and I pressed down, and this is the results that I got. Again, you need a good white ink, and I believe that Hero Arts is probably the best one. And that'll go on craft too. I didn't demo craft, but it's a good one. Also, you might want a metallic, and Delicata makes the most beautiful metallic inks. These are also pigment inks. They're sitting on top of the paper. If this was a dye, it would be trying to dye the paper. It would be soaking into the black paper. It wouldn't sit on top. You wouldn't see it. But boy, is that pretty. I don't know if you guys can get that shine and glisten, and I only stamped this one time. If I wanted to make it darker, I would have done it in my stamp platform, and I would have been able to keep stamping in the same place. But this is just one good time I hit it there. Again, Delicata makes the most beautiful. Crafter's Companion has some nice ones too, but Crafter's Companion is high. They're very expensive. And Delicata does beautiful, beautiful work. Now let's talk about dye inks. You'll see dye inks that they come in this little, some of them come in these little dewdrops, which are cute. They got a little and they're nice, and I own them. And also, you'll see dye inks in these little cubes. If you are tight on cash and you want to get a bunch of colors, you can get these. But when you have a large background stamp, you're kind of trying to get down there and tapping forever. It is a good option to get a bunch more for less, but I don't know if I suggest starting with cubes. I don't know that I do. I don't know that I don't. I don't know. The inks that I've chosen to invest in, Altenew, Katherine Pooler, and that's all for my dye inks. There are other dye inks that I believe you should have. Everybody should have this particular dye ink in my opinion, because this is the one that I use to Copic color with my alcohol ink markers. Memento Tuxedo Black is an OG. It's been around forever. Everybody knows about it, and it's probably the first ink that everybody used to go with their Copic coloring. I believe that Katherine Pooler and Altenew both make a dye ink that you can Copic color with. However, after you spent $10 on all of each on a marker, I won't test it, and I haven't seen enough people do it for me to want to try it. So for me personally, although I think I have the black in both of these. No, I don't think I have the black in the Altenew, but I do think it's Copic friendly. Do not quote me on that, because again, I don't know. I don't own it. I do have the black here. I have heard that it's Copic friendly, but I'm not. Oh no, nope, I'm not doing it. Memento Tuxedo Black. It's pitch black. It works great. I trust it for my Copic coloring. It's a dye ink. That's what I'm going to say about that. Altenew, this is Midnight Violet. Again, I did not prep this stamp. I didn't do anything special. This is a pretty solid image. I would be okay with this on a card. I'd be okay with it, even though I can kind of see a little bit of the white. I could have gotten a better impression had I prepped the stamp, or if I had stamped it multiple times. This is one time using Midnight Violet. Altenew has a beautiful felt pad. This is what it looks like. They come nice and juicy. They'll last you probably quite a long time without having to re-ink. I like it. It's felt. What that means is, you see the texture on the pad? Sometimes that texture will transfer onto here, and you'll have some little white spaces if you don't prep your pad. It's hard to get a completely solid image, even though I'm comfortable with this. I like Altenew because they have beautiful selection of colors. And if you like to do the layering stamps, they've done the work for you, because they come in sets of 4, and it's the right shades to go over one another. Beautiful, beautiful sets of inks. And then there's Katherine Pooler. You guys, Katherine Pooler is my jam. Not only is she my jam, she's kind of the crafty world's jam right now. I don't believe she's been around that long. I remember when I saw her at CHA, and she didn't have a ton of colors at the time. You see that? You see that image right there? Where is the white? Oh, you don't see it? That's because Katherine Pooler has, dun dun dun, a foam pad in here. Now, she says that it releases ink a lot different. It releases ink differently than the felt pads, and that you need to re-ink these suckers often. I have not found that to be the case, and I have worked these suckers. Ooh. Katherine Pooler inks probably get the most use. I love this ink in this pad, and I've noticed that the crafty community has really taken to her too. This is one of my favorite colors that she has. It's brand new. And just when you're using a solid stamp and you can get an image like this just from stamping, yes, absolutely. She doesn't have the widest array of colors just yet. And don't worry, guys, next year I'm changing to the Jennifer McGuire system. I fought that system on swatching forever, but I'm over it. I'm going to it. That's just what we're going to do. These are the colors that she offers, minus, I think, 2 colors. I own her entire collection. It's worth it. If you are just starting out and you want to do dye inks as opposed to pigment inks, dye inks dye the paper. They go into the paper. Pigment inks sit on top of the paper and give you more opaque. These are semi-opaque. If I had a black line, you'd probably be able to see the black line underneath this. Maybe not this particular color. Yeah, you would. They dye the paper. If you want to start your collection off stamping, this is who you buy. This is where you start. I love Katherine Pooler inks. That's just the truth of the matter. If you buy from her site, be ready to pay for shipping. I bought the entire collection that she had at the time in one fell swoop. And that sucker cost me so much money in shipping, and I was so annoyed until I started playing with it. You can also get it from Ellen Hudson, and I think that shipping, they might have some shipping deals. But you guys, it's a small company, so I get it. You know, small companies can't always say, you know, after $50 you ship free. I get it, fine. But it's worth every penny. I kid you not. Katherine Pooler, Katherine Pooler, Katherine Pooler. I can't sing her praises enough as far as her ink pads go. The price, the way that you can hold it in your hand, her colors, the way that she's starting to add colors, where she's filling in the gaps just makes sense to me, guys. I am not sponsored by Katherine Pooler. I would say that Katherine Pooler does not know who I am, but she kind of does now. But you guys, Katherine Pooler, she is not on any of the sites that I'm affiliated with. I'm just going to tell you good ink when I see it, and I'm going to tell you what I see the community using, and it's Katherine Pooler. This is where you start. This is what you buy. Okay. It's also water reactive. You can do techniques with it, and it blends like a dream. Oh, I probably just did 10 minutes on that there, so I guess we know where I fall in line with dye inks. Before the Katherine Poolers, before everybody, it was all about this guy right here. This is not the best ink for stamping, but it is an ink that everybody talks about. It was on the forefront when people were just kind of starting to ink blend. Tim Holtz was showing these techniques with his amazing self. We love him. He started it. However, now the things that you can do, or you could do with this, you can do with everybody else's. Everybody else got on the bandwagon. They have different colors. They have different ways of, their pads and things like that. This was the OG. I still own it. He's got 60 or 61 colors. They're great, but that's not where I suggest starting anymore. You can blend with these. They have beautiful colors. Regular distress ink is kind of a thing of the past, I hate to say. I'm like, I still blend with them. I still use them, but I do not suggest going out and grabbing all of the inks. I do, however, like the oxides. Oxides blend differently. They look differently when you stamp them. They are a mix between dye and pigment, and they're fun. There's something different. Again, Ranger and Stampers Anonymous and the people will probably always have something innovative coming out as far as like, what they call it, creative chemistry, that kind of thing. This is what it looks like stamped, just on white paper. Oxides have this weird property that when you wet them, they begin to oxidize. There it is, oxidize. And it kind of has a cloudy white. They all look different once you wet them. and they look even more different on black cardstock, but you can stamp them on black cardstock. Some of the colors come up better than others, but this is a cool ink. It's different. It goes, this is the same color on craft cardstock. They're fun, they're different, and he just released the last few colors. So if you like vintagey things and that kind of thing, you probably want to check out the oxides. Also, when they kind of have like a cloudy property, and if you really want to be super creative with it, use the distress inks on an ink blend and then use the oxides on top, picking up the color. It does something funky. It's really cool. Check out Tim Holt's videos on that. I do suggest oxides after a while once you're kind of building your collection. Now, there is a very special ink, and that is Versamark. Versamark is labeled as a watermark stamp pad. This is what it looks like. It's a clear, it's foam. It's a different type of foam than Katherine Pooler's. This is a foam that you can really beat up. It'll take a licking and keep on kicking. It's just clear. It's almost like Vaseline. It's not Vaseline, but it almost feels like Vaseline on a stamp pad. I've had this particular stamp pad forever. Mine's not as grody as some people's, but it's pretty grody. It will last you a very long time. It does different things. People use it for different things. I'm going to show you a few things that you can do with it right now. One of which is a watermark. You might not be able to see it. I've got to tilt it and lean it. This is just craft cardstock, and then I've stamped this on top. It gives a watermark. It's like you've taken water and wet the paper, but you haven't. Isn't that pretty? You could do a whole background with this and you'll see it. You know, it'll show up different in different light, that kind of thing. It's just nothing but like putting Vaseline. It's sticky. It's just a sticky ink. It's clear. It's a clear ink on paper. Something else, just one of the things that people use with it also is to emboss. Embossing is when you take the stamp, you put it in your Versamark, you stamp it on there, then you pour an embossing powder on top of it. Don't worry, I have embossing videos coming. And then you heat it up, and this is what happens. It gets that little melted, it melts and it kind of sits on top of your paper and you can feel it and it looks all beautiful. This is Rose Gold by Avery Elle. Something else people do with Versamark are they use it with perfect pearls. And I forgot how cool this is to use with perfect pearls. Can you see it? I said that like you were going to respond to me. Perfect pearls. And what you do is you take this and you dip it in your Versamark, you stamp it. Then you grab your perfect pearls. Perfect pearls are by Ranger. They come in tons of different colors. You dip your brush in there, you swirl it around, then you dust it off, and this is what you're left with. It's like a sticky binder. You don't need to heat this up. This will just automatically set, and you don't have to worry about it coming off because it's bound by the Versamark. Versamark is also great for prepping your stamps. If you want to get a better impression, sometimes you can take this and put it on your stamp and then dip it into your dye inks. And because it's sticky, it has that sticky property, it will pull the ink to the stamp, and you'll get a pretty cool impression on most occasions. It's another way to prep your stamps. Everybody should have a Versamark. I don't care which ink you tried, which ink you want. Most stampers have a Versamark ink pad too, especially if you want to heat emboss. There are other inks here that I see that can also heat emboss, but Versamark is definitely a great one to have to extend what you can do with your other inks. Lastly, there's some new stuff on the market always coming. There's different kinds of inks and things, but this one is kind of cool and it's newer. And this is the Alcohol Lift ink. And everybody was going crazy when Tim Holtz dropped this. All I did was take some alcohol ink and drip it on Yupo paper. I took my stamp pad, I tapped it in there, I stamped it, I gave it a minute, and then I was able to rub away most of the ink, and then it gives you this kind of impression here. Now, it's not one that I suggest that anybody has to have or anything like that. It lifts color from non-porous surfaces. It's just fun, and it's recently come out, and I thought I should talk about it too. Okay, guys, so these are the inks that I suggest, starting out with, if it were me, and I were starting my collection all over again, the very first place that I would start would be right here. This is what I would invest in. Now, because these are dye inks, if you take a red and a blue and stamp it on top of each other, you will get a purple. And it's kind of cool how that works. But I would start with this, and hers come in collections. So maybe you're more of a party collection kind of person, or maybe you're a spa collection kind of person, which are the more muted tones. It's your grown and sexy palette right here, and this is your fun party palette right there. She has them in sets that are already set up for you. You can get the whole thing if you choose to. Work it how you want, but again, I stand behind these. This is a beautiful ink, and I love the things that you're able to do with it. After that, I do like these because I love layering stamps, and they've done the work for you. They come in sets of 4, and you'll have the light, the dark, the super dark, and then the extra dark, and it will really make layering your stamps a lot easier. A beautiful ink that will last you forever. And then I would start with these. I know I said to buy this first if you just want to buy one ink and you want to buy cheap stamps, but this would be the third ink that I worked on if I were going in this order here. I'd get this, then I'd start collecting on this, and I don't have the full collection of Altenew inks. I have 5 more sets to go, maybe 4 more sets to go. It's very possible by the time this video is up, I'll have the last few sets because I'm just kind of tired of waiting on the collection being finished. So I bought these in stages because they're $25 for a set of 4. These here, I just grabbed all of these when they went on sale at Scrapbooking Made Simple. I think I was able to get these for like $6 or $7, and I want to say they retail for probably about $11. It's expensive, but it's nice. But again, I'd start here. Then I'd start collecting some of those, and then I'd go here. And then I'd trickle in with the rest of them. You know, don't get me wrong, they're great, they're beautiful. I get it. But if you want to see your stamp pads do what they were really intended to do, this is beautiful. And you need to get this, period. You just need to have a Versamark pad, point blank. I want to say this is probably about $6 or $7. Catch this with a coupon at Michael's, Hobby Lobby, or Joann's. You will not be disappointed with your Versamark pad if you decide that you want to become a stamper. All right, guys, that's my spiel on ink. Don't forget, with your stamps, there are tons of things you can do with them. You can watercolor, you can perfect pearls them, you can use aqua brushes and all different kinds of mediums and things, and I will show you quite a few techniques with them. But I hope that you guys embark upon this journey. I hope that I've helped you guys, and so now I am going to get into the videos of me making cards and playing with this and doing some techniques. You guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me. I hope this has been informative. Ask me all the questions you can think of, and I will respond. Again, thanks so much.